For 6 months, I quietly paid my son's rent, thinking love meant sacrifice. My daughter-in-law compared me to another woman at the dinner table, and my response changed everything.
My name is Margaret Allen, and until a few months ago, I believed that love, especially a mother's love, could fix anything. I believed that patience, kindness, and forgiveness could heal every crack in a family. That belief died the night my daughter-in-law looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're not even half the woman my mother is." The words came like a slap across the face. The fork in my hand froze mid-air, my heart thudding in my chest. The dining room, once filled with the smell of roasted chicken and vanilla pudding, suddenly felt colder than ice. Without thinking, I pushed my chair back. "Well then," I said quietly, "maybe your mother should start paying your rent." You could have heard a pin drop. Across the table, my son David went pale. His voice shot out like a whip. "Rent? What rent?" That's when everything started to unravel. The web of lies, the hidden sacrifices, and the truth about what I had become, a woman who loved too much and was respected too little. 6 months earlier, David had come to my door with tears in his eyes. He'd lost his job. His wife, Vanessa, was panicking about their bills, and they didn't know how they'd pay rent. "Mom," he said, voice trembling, "it'll just be for a couple months, until I find something new." "Of course," I agreed without hesitation. "That's what mothers do." I reached into my savings, the little money I'd put away after 40 years working as a seamstress, and started sending $900 every month to cover their rent. "Let's keep it between us, David. I don't want Vanessa feeling bad about it." I thought he was protecting her pride. In reality, he was protecting his own ego. While I was counting every dollar, skipping meals, and stretching my arthritis medicine, they were living comfortably, posting photos at restaurants, buying new clothes, talking about weekend getaways. But that night, I wanted to believe things were better. I'd invited them for dinner, David's favorite, chicken with mushroom sauce, rice with vegetables, and vanilla pudding, the one he loved since he was little. I spent all day cooking, polishing the silverware, and setting the table with my mother's old crystal glasses. When they arrived, I knew something was off. Vanessa was dressed in a tight red dress and shoes that screamed luxury. David wouldn't meet my eyes, scrolling through his phone like it was a lifeline. During dinner, Vanessa found something to criticize in everything. The food, my furniture, even the air freshener. "Don't you think it's time you updated this place, Margaret? My mom's house looks so modern. You'd love it. She just had her kitchen remodeled." I forced a smile. "That's nice, dear." Inside, I was seething. I'd lived in that house for over 30 years. Every piece of furniture, every photo held a story. But when dessert came, I thought we'd finally find a moment of peace. Instead, she delivered the words that would change everything. "You're not even half the woman my mother is." The spoon in my hand stopped mid-air. David looked down, silent, and in that silence, I realized he agreed with her. "Excuse me?" I whispered. Vanessa leaned back, smiling sweetly. "You heard me. My mother built her own business from scratch. She owns a beach house, travels the world, never needed anyone. You just cook and sew." Every word dug deeper than the last. Memories flashed through my mind. The nights I stayed up sewing dresses, the years I worked 2 jobs to pay for David's college, the times I sold jewelry to cover his bills. "Vanessa, that's enough," David muttered weakly, but his voice carried no conviction. I stood there shaking, not from fear, but fury. "You think your mother's better than me?" I said softly. "Then maybe she can start paying your rent." That's when David's face went white. "What rent?" he shouted. "The rent," I said calmly, "that I have been paying for 6 months, $900 every month from my savings, the same money I worked my whole life to earn." Vanessa's smug smile vanished. "You've been paying what?" "Yes," I said. "I've been covering your rent, your home, your comfort, while you sit there and insult me." David's chair scraped back. "You told me the landlord was giving you time?" "I lied," I said, voice steady now. "Because I thought I was helping my son. Because I thought you'd be grateful. But instead, you've both made me feel like a fool." The silence after that felt endless. Vanessa stared at the table, face pale. David ran his hair through his hair, like he used to when he was a boy in trouble. I continued. "I only lied because I believed it was temporary. I thought when you got back on your feet, you'd appreciate it. I never imagined you'd repay me with humiliation." I could feel the tears burning in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. "For 6 months, I've eaten eggs and rice for dinner. I've worn the same broken shoes. Last week, I even sold your father's wedding ring, the only thing I had left of him, just to make sure you had a roof over your head." David's mouth opened, but I raised my hand. "Don't interrupt. You need to hear this." Vanessa looked like she wanted to disappear. "Margaret, I didn't know. David never told me." "Of course you didn't, because your husband lied to you too. He wanted to look like a man in charge while depending on his mother." Then I turned to David. "You let her belittle me in my own home. You watched and said nothing." He stood there frozen, like a boy again, ashamed, exposed. That's when I realized something inside me had shifted. The part of me that kept forgiving, that kept making excuses, was gone.
"You said your mother's better than me, Vanessa," I said, voice trembling but firm. "Then maybe she should take care of you now. Because I'm done." For the first time, Vanessa had no clever comeback. David sank into his chair, hands covering his face. I could see it. Guilt, fear, and maybe even shame. But it didn't matter anymore. That night, I finally saw them both for who they really were. And for the first time in 70 years, I decided to stop being the kind of mother who saves everyone but herself. The room was silent, except for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. David's knuckles were white against the table as he gripped the edge like it could hold him up. Vanessa sat frozen, her eyes darting between us, searching for a way out of the humiliation that was now pouring over her like ice water. I took a deep breath and looked straight at her. "If your mother is as wonderful as you say, Vanessa, then I'm sure she won't have a problem helping you from now on. A successful woman like that should have no trouble paying her daughter's rent." The sarcasm was heavy, deliberate. And for the first time all evening, Vanessa had no words. David's voice trembled. "Mom, why didn't you tell me? Why did you make me believe you'd worked something out with the landlord?" I stared at him for a long moment before answering. "Because I'm your mother. When you came to me crying, saying you couldn't afford food, that you'd lost everything, I couldn't just sit back and watch. I thought I was helping you get back on your feet." Vanessa stayed quiet, but the color had drained from her face. The elegant red lipstick she wore looked almost clownish against her pale skin. "I lied because I thought it would be temporary. I told myself I was doing the right thing, but while I was eating rice and eggs for dinner, skipping my arthritis medication to save money, you two were dining out and buying new clothes." David ran his hands through his hair, the same nervous habit he had when he was a boy and had done something wrong. "Mom, please," he said weakly. I raised a hand. "No. You're going to listen.
For 6 months, I've gone without the little comforts I used to enjoy. I haven't bought myself a single new thing. And do you know what I did last week? My voice cracked slightly. I sold your father's wedding ring, the only piece of him I had left, just to keep paying for your rent. The tears that came weren't from sadness anymore. They were born from years of exhaustion. I sold the only thing that mattered to me, David, the ring of a man who loved me for 30 years. I gave up something priceless to help you. And in return, you both treated me like I was beneath you. Vanessa swallowed hard, her voice trembling. Margaret, I swear I didn't know. David never told you you were the one paying the rent. I turned my glare toward her. Of course you didn't know, because your husband wanted you to think he could handle it. He didn't want to admit that he was depending on his mother. You wanted a provider? Well, you got one. Me. David's face flushed red. Mom, that's not fair. You're twisting everything. I didn't ask you to give up that much. You insisted. I insisted? You showed up at my door crying like a child? You said you couldn't even afford bread? That your wife cried every night because of the bills? What was I supposed to do, David? Close the door on my own son? The silence that followed was deafening. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator in the next room. You know what hurts the most? I said finally, my voice low. It's not the money. It's that every time you came over, I could see it. The contempt in your eyes, the judgment. Vanessa criticized my home, my food, my clothes, all while living under a roof that I was paying for. And you let her. David took a step forward, his eyes glassy. Mom, please, let me explain. There's nothing left to explain, I said, cutting him off. Your wife made it clear I'll never be good enough. So let her mother prove she's the better woman by taking care of you both. Vanessa tried to collect herself, but her voice shook. Margaret, I didn't mean those words. I was upset. I shouldn't have said it. I laughed bitterly. Upset. Because you had to sit in the home of the woman paying your rent? Because you had to pretend to be polite to someone you consider beneath you? The tension was thick enough to choke on. David paced the floor like a trapped animal while Vanessa twisted a napkin in her trembling hands. You know the saddest part of all this? I said quietly. It's that I thought we were a family. When I married your father, I dreamed of a home filled with laughter, children, grandkids, family dinners. When you were born, I thought God had finally blessed me. And now I sit here wondering where I went wrong. David's eyes filled with tears. Mom, I love you. You know that.
Love? I said softly. Love isn't words, David. It's respect. It's honesty. It's defending me when your wife mocks me in my own house. It's not letting me sell your father's wedding ring just so you can live comfortably. That's not love. That's convenience. Vanessa suddenly stood, her chair scraping against the floor. That's enough. I'm not sitting here to be lectured like a child. Robert. David, I corrected coldly. My son's name is David. You'd think a woman living off her mother's money would at least remember it. Her cheeks flushed scarlet, but before she could fire back, David spoke. Sit down, Vanessa. We're not leaving, not until we sort this out. But I had already made my decision. There's nothing left to sort out. Starting tomorrow, I'm done paying your rent. If your mother is as incredible as you say, I'm sure she'll help you. David's voice broke. Mom, please, you can't do this. We don't have the money. I lost my job 2 weeks ago. My jaw tightened. You what? He looked down, shame written across his face. I was going to tell you tonight. The air left my lungs. You've been unemployed for 2 weeks, and you let your wife insult me knowing that you're living off my savings? Vanessa's head snapped toward him. You lost your job, and you didn't tell me?
Her voice rose into a high-pitched shriek. "Are you serious, David? I just bought new shoes yesterday, $400, and a spa appointment next week. You let me spend that money knowing we were broke?" He reached for her, but she shoved his hand away. Her perfectly done makeup began to run down her cheeks as tears mixed with mascara. The image was almost poetic, her artificial mask literally melting off. I stood there, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold like a tragedy I'd seen coming for years. "You see," I said finally, "this is what happens when everything is built on lies." David slumped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "Mom," he whispered, I messed up so bad." "You did?" I said quietly. "But what hurts more is that I let it happen. I kept protecting you when I should have let you stand on your own." For a moment, nobody spoke. Finally, I sighed. "Even now, after everything you've done, I still want to help. That's what mothers do, David. That's what unconditional love looks like. But maybe loving someone means knowing when to stop saving them." He looked up at me, eyes red and tired. "Mom, I've lost 3 jobs in the past 2 years. I kept lying to you. I told you it was downsizing or bad luck. But it was me. I can't seem to hold anything together." The confession hung in the air like smoke, heavy and bitter. I stared at my son, the boy I once rocked to sleep, who used to tell me I was his hero, and for the first time in my life, I didn't know if I pitied him or resented him.
I sighed. Love isn't the issue, David. Love without respect destroys people. Look at us. He nodded weakly, tears streaking his face. For once, Vanessa didn't roll her eyes or look annoyed. She just sat there, silent, staring at her husband as if she was seeing him for the first time. I turned toward the window. Outside, the night had deepened. The moonlight cast long shadows across the living room floor, cold, still, and strangely peaceful. Maybe that's what endings look like, I thought. Quiet, final. When I finally spoke again, my tone softened. "I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this so you both can stand on your own. I'm 70 years old, David. I can't keep working just to keep you comfortable." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He just nodded, defeated. "I'll pack up some leftovers for you," I said, walking toward the kitchen. "It's late. You should go home." Vanessa hesitated. "Margaret, I didn't mean what I said earlier about you not being half the woman my mother is." I looked over my shoulder. "Yes, you did. And maybe that's okay. Maybe tonight you'll see what being a woman really means. It's not about the house or the clothes or the vacations. It's about sacrifice." She looked down, ashamed. When they finally left, the house felt too quiet. I stood in the doorway for a long time, staring at the dark street outside. Their car pulled away slowly, the red tail lights disappearing around the corner. I closed the door and locked it. For the first time in years, I felt both empty and free. I sat at the kitchen table where the chaos had just taken place. The same table where I'd served countless dinners, celebrated birthdays, bandaged scraped knees. The memories crowded around me like ghosts. I looked at the empty dessert bowls, the spilled water, the abandoned napkins, all the little signs of a night that had changed everything. Then my eyes landed on the photo hanging on the wall. My husband, George, holding David as a baby. They were both smiling. That picture had always reminded me why I kept forgiving, why I kept giving. But now, for the first time, I wondered if my husband would have told me to stop. The next morning, I woke up early. Old habits die hard.
The sun poured through the kitchen window, catching the dust in the air. I made myself coffee, black, no sugar, and sat quietly, listening to the hum of the city waking up. My phone buzzed. A text from David. "Mom, I'm sorry. We'll figure things out. Please don't worry about us." I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled up through the messages, the endless chain of pleas, excuses, promises, and I realized something. I had spent years rescuing a man who never learned to swim. It was time to let him sink or finally learn to float. Around noon, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, my neighbor Claire stood there holding a small basket. "Heard some shouting last night. Everything okay?" I gave a small laugh. For the first time in a long while, yes. She nodded, understanding more than I said. "You've always carried too much for that boy. Maybe now he'll stand on his own. Maybe, or maybe, I'll finally stand on mine." Claire squeezed my hand. "You deserve peace, Margaret." After she left, I went to my sewing room, that little corner that had paid for their rent, their groceries, their life. The fabric scraps were still piled high, the machine waiting silently. For years, I had stitched together pieces for other people's dreams. Dresses for weddings, suits for graduations, costumes for celebrations. But never anything for myself. That day, I began sewing again. Not for money this time, but for me. As I worked, I thought about David. I pictured him sitting in that apartment, finally realizing what he'd done. Maybe he was angry, maybe he was ashamed. Either way, I hoped he was learning. And Vanessa. I imagined her pacing, worried about her mother finding out, finally confronting what it meant to depend on others. They had built their life on appearances. Now they'd have to build it on truth. That evening, I went through my dresser drawer and found the small velvet box where George's wedding ring had once been. It was empty. I ran my finger along the soft lining and whispered, "I'm sorry, George." For years, I had worn sacrifice like a badge of honor. But that night, I finally understood something. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's surrender. I placed the box back in the drawer, then looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't weak or pitiful. She was tired, yes, but strong, free. "Enough," I said out loud. "It's time to live for me." Outside, the streetlights flickered on, one by one. The world kept moving. And for the first time in decades, so did I. 3 days passed before I heard from David again. During that time, the silence was almost peaceful. No calls, no pleading texts, no guilt pressing down on my shoulders. For the first time in years, my phone stayed quiet. And so did my mind. But peace never lasts long when you're a mother. On the 4th morning, there was a knock at the door. It wasn't the light, polite kind. It was hard and uneven, desperate. When I opened it, David was standing there. His eyes were red-shot, his shirt wrinkled, his hair a mess. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Mom," he said softly.
I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, letting him feel the weight of the silence he had created. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside without a word. He walked into the house slowly, like a man entering a church, his eyes darting to the kitchen table where everything had gone wrong. I'm sorry for the other night," he started. "Vanessa and things have been hard. I didn't mean for it to explode like that." I folded my arms. "Hard?" I said, my voice flat. "Hard.
is working 50 years to raise a child who doesn't see what's right in front of him. Hard is selling your husband's ring just so your son doesn't get evicted. That's hard. He winced. Mom, I know. I know I hurt you. No, I said. You didn't just hurt me, David. You broke something that can't be fixed. He sank into a chair and buried his face in his hands. I don't know what to do anymore. Vanessa's gone. That caught me off guard. Gone? She packed up and left yesterday. Says she couldn't live like this. Her mom sent her money for a flight to Florida. I sat down across from him, feeling the strange mix of sadness and inevitability. So she ran. He nodded. Yeah. She said she needed space. I guess her idea of space includes a beach house and her mother's credit card. Despite everything, I almost laughed. Well, I suppose that solves one of your problems. He looked up, guilt in his eyes. I deserve that. I studied him for a moment, the son I'd always tried to protect, now sitting in front of me, hollowed out by his own decisions. David, I said gently, maybe this is what needed to happen. You've been living in her shadow and mine for too long. It's time you stand on your own. He exhaled shakily. I don't even know where to start. Mom, I can't pay rent. I can't even pay for groceries. Then start by admitting it, I said. Admit that you've hit rock bottom. Only then can you climb up. He nodded, eyes wet. I've been applying for jobs, but no one's called back. I think I've ruined my chances with all those firings. Then learn from them, I said. Every failure teaches something if you're willing to listen. He looked down, whispering, I've been scared for so long. Scared of failing again. Scared of disappointing you. I reached across the table and put my hand on his. You already did. But you're still my son. And that means you get another chance. But this time, you earn it. He nodded, his voice cracking. I will, Mom. I swear. After he left, I sat alone for a long time. My emotions were tangled, a mix of love, anger, pity, and something like hope. Maybe, I thought, this was the beginning of something different. Not forgiveness yet, but understanding. That night, I cooked a small dinner, just soup and bread, and for once, I ate slowly, without rushing, without guilt. Every spoonful felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The next few weeks were quiet. David didn't call often, but when he did, it wasn't to ask for money. It was to tell me small things. He applied somewhere new. He'd gone to a job fair. He'd even started helping a friend with landscaping for extra cash. It wasn't much, but it was something. One afternoon, while I was mending an old quilt in my sewing room, my phone buzzed. A message from David. Got an interview today. Wish me luck. I smiled. It wasn't the first time I'd seen those words, but something about them felt different this time. I typed back, You don't need luck, son. You just need honesty. A week later, he called. His voice sounded brighter, steadier. Mom, I got it. It's not much, just a warehouse job, but it's full-time. I felt something in my chest unclench. That's wonderful, David. He said, I'm going to keep this one. I swear I will. I wanted to believe him. I really did. And maybe, deep down, I did. Around the same time, I started to change too. I began walking every morning, just around the block at first. The neighbors would wave, surprised to see me out. I started taking small sewing commissions again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And on weekends, I'd sit on the porch with a cup of coffee and think about the years I'd lost trying to fix everyone else. It was time to fix myself instead. Then one Friday evening, there was another knock on the door. This one was softer, hesitant. When I opened it, David stood there holding a small brown envelope. "Don't worry," he said quickly, seeing my wary look. "I'm not here to ask for anything." He handed me the envelope. Inside was a stack of bills, crumpled, small denominations, but real money. "It's $200, he said. "It's my first payment for what I owe you." I felt my throat tighten. "David." "No," he said firmly. "Let me do this. I need to make things right." I nodded slowly, swallowing hard. "I'm proud of you."
He smiled, a small, shy smile I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. "I've been sober too, Mom." That caught me off guard. "Sober?" He nodded. "That's what I meant when I said I had a problem. I've been drinking more than I should for years. It started when I lost my first job. I didn't tell you because I was ashamed." I sat down, my heart breaking all over again. "Oh, David." "He joined a group," he continued. "They're helping me, one day at a time." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I got up and hugged him. For the first time in months, maybe years, I held my son, not the man who lied or failed, but the boy who was finally trying. After he left, I stood by the window, watching him walk down the street. The air felt lighter somehow. For the first time, I didn't feel the weight of responsibility pressing on my shoulders. He wasn't my burden anymore. He was my son again. That night, I sat at my sewing table and started stitching something new. A quilt made entirely from leftover scraps, pieces of old fabric that didn't match, but somehow belonged together. Each piece had its own story, like me. As I worked, I thought about forgiveness, not the kind that forgets, but the kind that frees you. Maybe that's what I had been missing all along. It's strange how time heals what anger can't. Weeks turned into months, and little by little the bitterness I carried began to fade. It didn't happen suddenly. It was quiet, like a wound closing on its own. Every morning, I'd wake up to the sound of the city coming alive, car horns, birds, the rumble of the garbage truck. It all sounded different now, softer, lighter. I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring anymore. I wasn't watching the door. I wasn't worrying about who needed what from me next. For the first time in decades, I was living for myself. David kept his word. He called once a week, not to ask for money or favors, but to talk, real conversations, honest ones. Sometimes we'd talk about his job, sometimes about the meetings he attended, sometimes just about the weather. Each time, his voice sounded a little steadier, a little stronger. And slowly, I started to believe in him again, not as the boy who needed saving, but as the man he was finally becoming. One Sunday afternoon, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, David stood there again, but this time he looked different. His shirt was clean, his eyes clear. He held a paper bag in one hand and a shy smile on his face. "Brought you something," he said. He stepped inside and set the bag on the counter. Inside was a loaf of fresh bread, some flowers, and a small velvet box. My heart skipped a beat. "Go ahead," he said softly. "Open it." I lifted the lid, and there it was, my husband's wedding ring, the same one I had sold months ago to pay their rent. "How?" I whispered, my voice barely holding. He said, "I found the pawn shop receipt in one of your drawers. Took a few weeks, but I tracked it down. The owner still had it. I used my first full paycheck to buy it back." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My throat tightened. My eyes blurred. "Oh, David." He smiled faintly. "I told you once that love without respect isn't love. I think I finally understand what you meant." I didn't even realize I was crying until he took my hand. "Mom," he said, his voice trembling, "I can't change what I did. I can't undo all the lies or the things I let Vanessa say to you, but I can try to make it right, one small thing at a time." I nodded, unable to speak. I slipped the ring back into its box and closed it gently. "That's all of us can do, son. Try to make it right." We sat together at the kitchen table, sharing the bread he'd brought. It wasn't a fancy meal, but it felt like the most meaningful one I'd had in years. The same table that had once held so much anger now felt peaceful. The tension was gone. Only truth remained. David told me he was working overtime at the warehouse, that he was saving for his own place, somewhere small but decent. He wasn't seeing Vanessa anymore. She tried calling once or twice, but he'd ignored her. She wanted me back, but not because she missed me. She just didn't want to struggle. And I can't live like that anymore. I nodded. "You deserve better. We all do." Later that evening, after he'd gone home, I sat in the same spot, watching the sun dip below the rooftops. The orange glow washed over the room, making the air shimmer. I thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the tears, the heartbreak, and realized that maybe it had all been necessary. Sometimes love has to break before it can become real. I had spent years believing that being a good mother meant giving everything I had. But that night, I understood something new. Being a good mother also means knowing when to stop. Because if you keep carrying your children forever, they never learn how to walk. A few weeks later, David invited me to dinner. His treat, he said. When I got to the restaurant, he was already there, wearing a clean blue button-up shirt and a proud smile. "I got promoted," he said, barely able to contain his excitement. "Shift supervisor. It's not a big deal, but it's a start." I felt tears well up again, but this time they were the good kind. "I'm proud of you," I said. He laughed. "You've said that a lot lately." I mean it every time. We ate, we talked, and for the first time in years, it felt easy. No tension, no hidden guilt, just a mother and her son, two people who had finally learned how to love each other the right way, with respect. After dinner, he walked me to my car. The night air was cool and the sky was full of stars. I could see the reflection of streetlights in his eyes, clear, focused, alive. He turned to me and said quietly, "You know, I never realized how much strength it took for you to stop helping me. I thought you were being cruel, but now I see you were giving me the best gift of all." I smiled. The chance to stand on your own? He nodded. Yeah, and the chance to earn your forgiveness. You don't have to earn that, I said softly. You already have it. He hugged me, really hugged me, and I held on tight. For the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like I was holding up the world. It felt like my son was holding me. When I got home, I placed the velvet box on the mantel above the fireplace. The ring glimmered softly under the light, not as a symbol of loss anymore, but of everything that had been found again: trust, respect, peace. I sat by the window, sipping tea, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. The air smelled of rain and new beginnings. And as the night settled in, I realized that the story wasn't about betrayal anymore. It was about redemption, about how love, even when broken, can still rebuild itself. So if you ever find yourself in my place, loving too much, giving too much, losing yourself just to keep someone else standing, remember this. Love isn't measured by how much you sacrifice. It's measured by how much you respect yourself while giving it. Because sometimes the bravest thing a mother can do is let go. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that sometimes love means letting go. Join us for more real stories that speak to the heart.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next part of this story. I'm sharing raw, emotional, real-life revenge tales, the kind that keep you up at night and make you whisper, "She didn't just survive, she rewrote the rules." Subscribe now, because justice doesn't wait, and neither do I.